Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Installation, and in today's video we're doing a multi-channel amplifier install and B&O factory amplifier bypass on this 2017 Ford Raptor or F150. Now in this install we're going to show you how to bypass and remove the factory amplifier. We'll head to the bench, show you the new amps we're installing in this truck. We'll come back here to get everything reinstalled. Let's get started. Before we jump into things, a couple of things to note. Being that it's a Raptor, it's still an F-150 with the B&O audio sound system. Now Ford installed B&O from about 2017 through 2020 on this generation. Prior to that 2017 model, it was Sony from 2015 and 16. Now, the process is going to be just about the same whether you have Sony or B&O, and we can link those corresponding parts in the description if you happen to be the Sony version. Now, regardless, this install is going to show you how to bypass that factory amplifier to install your new amplifiers, as our plan in this specific truck is running a 4-channel to power all our door and dash speakers, and a sub or monoblock amplifier to power 4/8 that we're going to have underneath the rear seats. Here at the bench, the other parts that we're using in today's install, first and foremost, are the amplifiers the customer wants to go with. Now we're doing 2 amps. Now we could simplify this and do a 5-channel amplifier, which more or less has the technology of both amplifiers into one platform, but we need more power than a 5-channel amp could produce, hence why we're doing 2 separate. Now this is a 1500 watt amplifier. RMS, it does that at 1 ohm, and that's going to power 4 Scar Audio 8-inch forward-firing subwoofers, everything wired to 1 ohm. So that's going to run our subs. Our 4-channel here does about 150 watts by 4 at 4 ohms. It's a little more we need, but it's going to be an awesome amplifier because it's going to power our door and dash speakers in our F-150. Now, in order for us to bypass the factory amplifier, there is a couple of different ways to do it, and it depends on the radio that you're running. If you're running a factory radio or the factory 8-inch radio, PAC does make a harness kit that allows you to retain that factory radio while bypassing the factory B&O audio sound system. Alternatively, in our case, we have already replaced the radio, so we don't need the full line-out converter bypass harness, and we just need the wiring itself. So in our case, we're using the PAC APH-FD02. If you had the Sony version, it'd be the FD01, but more or less what that's going to provide for us is a harness to make plug-and-play speaker outputs from our 4-channel to all our speakers, so we don't really have to run a ton of new wiring. It's really convenient. Again, if you're running the factory radio, you need a different harness than this, and we can link that information in the description. Now, wiring-wise, in order for us to power our amplifier, we're going with this 1/0 oxygen-free copper kit by Scar Audio as well, and we're going to break that 1/0 into 2 4-gauges using these distribution blocks, 1 4-gauge to this amp and 1 4-gauge to this amp, using 4-gauge OFC wiring as well. That's going to allow us to conveniently just run 1 power wire, and we'll split it back here for our 2 amplifiers. Now, ground-wise, there's always a question on grounds on these specific F-150 generations going forward because the body is aluminum. Oftentimes, you could see some sort of voltage drop if you won't run a dedicated ground from your amplifier rack to the battery. In our case, we've been actually really lucky. We haven't had that issue, but if you're worried about a voltage drop, because again, it's an aluminum body, you can run a dedicated ground, also 1/0 all the way to the battery. In this case, we're going to see how this performs without doing that. Now, obviously not pictured here is the subs and the box that we're going with. 4 8-inch SDR Scar Audio subwoofers. These are the dual voice coil 2 ohm, because we're going to wire each sub individually in series up to 4 ohms. Then we're going to wire all the subs together in parallel, which will give us a final impedance of 1 ohm. Lastly, here we have this wonderful 1087 Designs amplifier rack. We use these a ton. These guys make fantastic stuff. We just love using it. It's not a paid link or anything, but we can link one of these in the description. It comes with a few different sizes. This is the half rack. They make a full rack. This half rack was plenty of space for us here today and will replace the factory sub location and factory amplifier mount with this nice convenient ABS board. All that being said, really at this point in time, we are here at the bench. We're going to start wiring up our amplifiers. We're going to run power and ground from both amps to our distribution blocks. We got to run our RCA cables from our amplifiers up to our radio because it's going to pull signal from there. And fortunately, this is most of our speaker wire outputs except for our dash tweeters. We're going to wire this in. We're going to clean this up a little bit, and these will go to the outputs of our 4-channel. So let's jump into things and start wiring. Now here in the back, our factory amplifier is located behind the rear driver's side seat. There's no traditional handle to get to this. Really, you have to stick your hand back behind the panel, just like so, if this was folded up, and there is a little release here that you have to pull up in order for that to allow the seat to come down. There are kits on the market that allow you to actually put in a traditional pull release, but you pull this on up. You can use a close-ended wrench or something like that to grab a hold of that. Allows you to put the seat down, giving you great access to the factory B&O amplifier. Now, if you have the Sony version, it's in the same location. It's just going to use a slightly different harness. But the Sony also looks like the same sub as well. So what we're going to do is actually going to gut all of this. We're bypassing 100% the factory B&O amplifier, and the sub itself and our amp rack will fit in that factory location. Now, our bypass harness will connect into the main harness that went into the amplifier. Since this amp is 100% going, we don't need it anymore. Then our harnesses will connect into that. Again, like mentioned before, it includes all our speaker connections except the dash A-pillar tweeters. So we'll have to run new wiring for those. Okay, so what we've done here is we've just run our power and ground here to our distribution block. Powers, grounds. You could do a fused one. It's really your choice. Our main run's already going to be fused. So that's your call. We have power for our 4-channel amp, power for our bass amp here. This is OFC 4 gauge that we're using. And we're going to use the terminal for the remote wire on the 4-channel amp as kind of a distribution to run remote for our bass amps. We're going to route that same remote signal so it turns on our bass amp for us. We did our 12-volt clean wiring method here. Put some nice Provo B seat shrink on. It looks great. So we're really done with the power and ground on this end. What we still need to do on the bass amp is our speaker wire output. And then now what we're going to focus on our 4-channel is also the speaker wire output to power our door and dash speakers. This is where our new amp bypass harness comes into play. Now there is a male in which we really don't need, so we're probably going to just depin these or cut them off. It's a data connection, but since we're not keeping the factory amp, we're not going to keep that data connection. The amp's 100% going. So we're going to take off this male end. We just don't need it at this time. We can depin a lot of these orange ones because, again, they're for future use according to pack. And what we have here is already color coding schemes for our wiring harness, which is super nice. So we got front left, front right, rear left, rear right. For the doors, it also includes the red and the blue, or our subwoofer connection, but we're not keeping our sub, so we'll probably depin and remove these ones because the sub's obviously going to be in this place, but our air rack's going to be there. And then our brown one is our center channel. We're not going to amplify it. We're just going to leave it disconnected. It's probably not going to be needed in this application. Now, like I said, you don't see in this harness are tweeters, and they're not run in parallel with our front door speaker channels. We're going to have to run new wire directly to those tweeters, unfortunately. That's different for the Sony, but for the B&O amp just doesn't power the tweeters. For our front channels on our amplifier, it's going to run our front door speakers and our dash speakers. So we'll just have 2 sets of outputs from our front channels. and then a single set of output for rear channels because the rear doors are coaxials. So we're going to prep our harness here, and then we're going to do the same thing. Our factory amp is about in this location, so we're going to go ahead and get this tied in and then leave these out. So this really will just plug in to the factory amp harness. So I went ahead and just depinned the wires we're not using. I pulled out the subs, I pulled out the not used channels, pulled out the center channel, just leaving our 4 door speakers here. And then I twist the wire, and now I'm going to put some wire ferrules on there so these wires don't get crushed in the wire terminals. All right, so we went ahead and got everything all wired. We have our speaker wire outputs. We twisted them, ran them down. This will connect into the factory harness there. And we repurposed a blue and a red twisted pair that were originally for the sub. We're gonna use those for our tweeters. We just tie those into the wire ferrules, came on down. Red's going to be our right, blue's going to be our left, and then we'll just run our own wire all the way up directly to those tweeters and crossovers. So that's the plan anyways. We got our 4-door speakers, that's all pinned here, which is super nice. This is our remote turn on that'll go in from our aftermarket radio, and that'll go down and also provide a turn on for our bass amp. We're going to go ahead and add our sub output wires here. And this amp also has a bass knob. We'll just run it through our RCAs. Now our RCAs, we do a little bit differently on this specific install because we've already replaced the radio and waiting on parts. So we have already run the RCAs to the radio and they're just dumped out into the kick panel. We'll actually end up pulling those back towards the amps. So we'll have a little bit left over. So they're already in the car, which is why we haven't tied them to the amp board, just because they're already in the car. We don't want to try to assemble that amp board in the car too. It's just too much. So we're going to pull those up through these 2-axis holes here into the RCA inputs of our amplifiers. Keep it simple. So this is really about it. Our power 1-out will go in here. Our ground will go here. Our ground goes through here, and then it'll go up to a factory ground location. And then we just need our sub output wires, and we'll drop those down. All right, so we got our amp rack basically all done except for connecting our RCAs, which we'll do once it's in the vehicle. We got everything hooked up here. We had a 4-pin harness that we're going to use for tweeters. We have the male end too, which will connect and extend those wires all the way up to the tweeters. RCAs will come out through these ports here to those inputs. But that's about it here. Got our ground coming out and our sub output wires. So at this point in time, we can more or less get this installed in the vehicle. So we got this set into place, just removed the bolts, so we took out the old rack and subwoofer. This is sitting in here. We did take this out temporarily from the 10mm so we can fit it in place, but we'll put that bracket in as soon as we're done. And looks like these lot holes will line up to mount our lower piece. They provide a little plastic washer to go up underneath before you put the bolts in. But it's looking great. Now we need to pull our RCAs along the kick panels, and we got to run our power wire to the battery and connect our tweeters. But the nice thing is our harnesses here, at least the one will, connect into the other gray harness. And then obviously we have to run direct lines right to our tweeters because it's not pinned here. So we're getting close. This is coming along nicely, and let's just keep moving forward. Now we ran our RCAs for our amplifiers, and so we're going to connect those into the RCA outputs on the back of the radio. All right, so we got our tweeter wiring more or less done here. This is just 18 gauge speaker wire. And again, since we had one of these leftover Toyota harnesses, we just made it plug and play. But we have 2 runs all the way down. And one end will go to the left tweeter, and one end will go to the right tweeter. Now we're gonna run it along the passenger side up into the dash, and then we'll cut over and run it over to the passenger side tweeter as well. With all these kick panels pulled apart now, we're at our RC cables, base knob wire, and also remote turn on, and our tweeter wires just underneath these kick panels. Super nice and easy, plenty of space to run them. Up underneath the B pillar, out from the B pillar, we just continue back behind the C pillar. Our tweeter harness that we built comes right up into here, and then that'll connect into the output of our amplifier here. RCAs, we fished them through. Got those all connected. And like I said, our tweeter wires go this way. Both sets, both are for left and the right tweeter up in the A pillars. We'll just split them off once we get to the dash. But that's really it. We just need to run our power connection. But at this point in time, we could probably get this now in and mounted, and then run our power wire. We're going to go on the passenger side as the battery is in the front right corner. Here's our good factory ground location. We're just going to mirror what's currently there, and so we're going to clean this up with a wire brush and get that mounted in that factory spot. With that all cleaned up, now we're going to put our ground there and the factory ground there. Now it's at this point in time whether you also want to determine to add a ground from this point, copper ground all the way up to the battery. That's up to you. Monitor your voltage. If you don't have voltage drop, you're probably fine. If you're having voltage issues or anything of the sort, just go ahead and run a dedicated ground from this point. We can link or run a wire in the description, but run it all the way up to the negative of the battery. All right, so our ground is on. We're good to go. It's all bolted in, got our wiring all cleaned up here. Let's now turn our attention over to popping the hood and start pulling our wire from the battery, that power wire, from that location through the firewall, underneath kick panels, into our distribution block. All right, so our battery is here on the passenger side, and the positive post is indicated with the red side. Now, this is the stud right here that we're going to be connecting our power wire to. Before we do that, we do also want to install the included inline fuse with our fuse and fuse holder with our amplifier wiring kit, and we'll make some sort of bracket or mount so we can mount it here. Oftentimes we snag this bolt, make a little bracket, so it sits. Now, in terms of passing it through the firewall, if we look back behind, there is right there the factory grommet that actually passes most of your wire through the firewall. Now on the left hand side, Ford is graciously left a nipple that we can cut off to access and pull our own wire through that same grommet. You don't necessarily have to drill and put your own hole in the firewall. So we're going to use some pair of flush cuts to cut off that nipple. Then we're going to grease up that hole just so we can pass our wire easily through that into the cabin so we can make its way all the way to the amp rack. Okay, so what we did is we cut off the nipple there, as you can see, and then we got our notorious metal hanger, something that everybody will have at home. Straighten it out, and basically we poke that through. There's a little thin rubber barrier on the inside of that grommet. We lube that up with a ton of soap and water, poked right on through. It took us a couple of tries to get it to drop down where we want it, but we'll show you where it passes through. Drop down this panel up underneath the dash, and more or less it just comes down. What we're going to do from this point is we got our power wire on the ring terminal end, and we hooked that through that hanger. And we're going to really lubricate this with a ton of soap and water. Do yourself a favor, use more than you need. You want this as slippery as possible, so we're going to go top side from the engine bay and pull this on through. With that wire passed on through, we tucked it up underneath the panels, kind of like the same technique we did with the wiring on the driver's side. Up underneath, just tucked it up underneath the B pillar here. And continued along. Now we just tucked it down there, fished it back behind the panel. We tucked it back behind the jack into the positive side of the distribution block, which now sends power to both amplifiers. Now, of course, even on the power wire side, we add wire ferrules here, just so that wire is not totally crushed or destroyed when we use those screw terminals. All right, so we pulled our power wire through. We actually just built an L bracket out of 1/8 inch ABS plastic. So it's nice and solid. We snagged the 2 fuse box bolts to bolt that in there. And mounted our fuse holder to it, then ran this around, and this went to the positive post there on the battery. So that's all done. Now here in editing, unfortunately, I realized that somehow I lost both the demo as well as my closing remarks video content for this install, and I am so sorry. So we're gonna have to accomplish that over voiceover. Now we finished up our amplifier install, we set our gains and crossovers with SMD products, and more or less got the subs in, and this thing sounded fantastic. I have other similar videos on the channel if you wanna hear something similar. Now, if you like any of the parts that we used in today's video, we'll link those in the description along with any other recommended parts for your install. Additionally, we have a ton of videos on this generation F150, so if you want to see door speakers, dash speakers, or anything of the sort, we'll link those also in the description of this one. If you want to see the radio install, we'll also link that video as well. Thanks again for watching. Be sure to hit the like button if you liked what you saw, and don't forget to subscribe to post great content on the channel all the time. We will see you in the next video.